I'm Catherine Austin, and welcome to another Living Karma Yoga, a show where we celebrate all that the yoga world has to offer, from the postures to music, mantra, meditation, travel, cooking, and so much more. Yoga for 1 hour just isn't enough in today's busy world, so we're going to help you take your yoga off the mat and into your life. I hope you find here many tools to help you live the life you deserve. And that's a life where you can literally vibrate love, joy, fulfillment, and abundance in all forms. I'm so excited to have one of our longtime students, Beate Stumpe, with us today. She's a longtime student and fan of Karma Yoga Bloomfield Hills. She received her registered yoga teacher certification in 2010 with my program. And recently, she returned from a 2-year assignment in Switzerland where she led all marketing and communication activities across Europe for a major American car brand as part of her 20-year-long corporate executive career. She's now the owner of Be Yourself Coaching and Consulting. And today she's going to be talking to me about her very own 2-year journey home, an essay which she wrote recently that fits right into our TV show series. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Catherine.
You recently got together with me and we were reconnecting because when you were gone for a couple years, you did touch base like with some emails, and we stayed connected in Facebook too. It was great.
Right.
But it was so nice to get back together, and you started to tell me about what really went on for your 2-year journey. And I thought we need to share this because you were really experiencing so many aspects of your yoga on and off the mat when you went to Switzerland. And then your journey, as you say, back home to yoga. So just let's talk about, start where you want to start with why you went to Switzerland, what we know for work, but then what happened?
Well, let me take you back. I actually started in Switzerland after a couple of months traveling there and back to the States, and finally in July of 2012 it was, I landed in Switzerland for good. I had an apartment, and so July 9th I think it was, I put my head down and I was thinking about how do I get organized, and my life started in a complete new culture. You could say I'm German, and it's the same, but it's not quite the same.
No.
So, I wanted to get myself quickly up to speed. I looked for a couple of yoga studios, wanted to have yoga as part of my life.
Right, because it always had been.
And I thought it was as easy as when I had moved to Moscow. But Switzerland, Zurich in particular, is very different. And for the people that have not lived in Zurich, maybe a little bit of background here.
Yeah, please.
You're talking about a very small city, very clean, very, very well organized. When you think in terms of traffic, the first are pedestrians. You always have to watch the pedestrians. Then
so it's a real city.
It's a real city. Then there are trams. It's a very meticulous system of trams that go back and forth in the city. Then there are bikes. And then there's a long time nothing before actually you can talk about a car driver.
Oh, wow.
So cars and Zurich is something very particular. And the yoga studio I had eyeballed ended up being right in the middle of Zurich. And parking in Zurich is a nightmare. And nothing comes for free. Everything is small, including the studios. And
did you have a car then?
So I did have a car, but the studio was located. So here I worked, and I would have needed a car from home and a tram to go here, and it was just not doable.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the prices. So I did a couple of test classes, and so I was like, wow, 40 Swiss francs, a little bit more in US dollars, a class. Upward. And
$40 a class.
Right.
In US dollars.
And you have to park a car.
Right.
So you have to go there, park a little longer than an hour and a half. Maybe you want to have a water, a tea after the class and chat with somebody. So you're in with $50 US a class.
Wow.
And needless to say, all my calculations and my status as an expat, where you get a lot of support from your company to make your life as easy as possible, that was too expensive.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, signal is clear. We're opening up our own little room at home and make a little bit of space.
Home practice.
So I had my home practice installed. I had a mat rolled out. Luckily, I had enough space to do that. I had a little lamp. And so 5 in the morning, I would get up and I would start my own practice. I had practiced enough to take me through an Ashtanga short series or the primary series. I knew it all. And about a month and a half into it, I kind of went onto this mat in the mornings and I was like, I feel lonely.
You miss your community.
I didn't have, music, which was one part, but then I was like, I was silently saying my invocation because I didn't want to wake up the neighbors. Everything is so packed,
Oh.
And then I felt, wow, I miss this wisdom that comes with a great yoga teacher, that's woven through a class that comes to you, or the occasional adjustment that brings you deeper into a pose. And I realized I was really missing also the vocabulary, like flare your inner thighs towards the back of the wall, or square that hip so you stay in alignment. So I was missing this. And
now, prior to going to Germany or Switzerland, had you ever done a home practice before here?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really.
Yeah, so this is big.
Yeah, so it's very big. So what happened is I continued that home practice for, I would say, probably 2-3 months. And I started feeling achy. I started to feel my right shoulder, which I knew already from here had bothered me every now and then. And then this little tiny pinch throughout the day every now and then on the right lower back. And then at one morning practice, I remember I had cranked myself and vercocked myself a little bit. And I had a stiff neck and a stiff upper back. So when I went into the office, and I had introduced myself in July as, this passionate yoga follower, and everybody knew me and knew that I was doing home practice. They were all like, well, something didn't go right there.
Right.
And I'm like, you are right. And my body is telling me something here. So it's slightly degrading, kind of. And and I remember it must have been around November 9th, that time, when I finally at a morning practice crashed on my yoga mat. And
so you'd been kind of forcing
sad.
it?
Yeah. I was sad. I had realized I'm aching. I had this neck issue. It was slowly going away, but not really. And I had to accept that my body was sending me some signals. And I just didn't want to listen to it because I wanted to stay in shape and I wanted to do this whole thing. And
well, you love your yoga.
So I love my yoga, and I'm like, how can I bring this all together? I'm desperate. So I sat on this yoga mat, and I was really destroyed on this mat. And so finally I made a decision that morning. I'm going to go into a 6-week break.
Right.
Which was a huge thing for me. And I don't even know where I got the 6 weeks from. I must have heard it from friends that said, oh, a muscle tissue heals between 6 to 8 weeks, a bone heals. Well, here my shoulder could please heal in 6 to 8 weeks. So that's what I did. I kind of went silent.
And where did that take you?
So I actually sometimes sat on my yoga mat, in the mornings, and fast forward, it was January, February of 2013 by that time. And at that time, I remember these rapes in India surfaced.
Right.
That one woman that went around the world, everybody was appalled what happened. And very shortly on the heels of that came this very own Switzerland story of a Swiss couple who had gone to India to explore on their own, and the bad things that happened there, and the husband who had to watch it. And I sat there, had interrupted my practice, and I realized all of a sudden, wow, I had subscribed to a system that I had never really visited. I had never been in India. I don't know how the life in India works. For me, it was, India always was this magic land. The harmony, the peace, the music, the temples, the spices, the gold, the jewelry, friendliness, and here we go, this.
Right.
And then all of a sudden a Swiss story comes really close to you. And I was stumped, and I was disenchanted, and I was actually really, for me, a world broke apart simply because, and not many people know that, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain, which I consider a longitudinal experiment in itself.
I'm sure.
Which luckily fell apart. But here we go. I thought I had found a society that is peace and harmony and colors and friendliness and you and me, and nope. So a second system fell apart around me, and I was just devastated, I think. And
Right.
maybe it was an excuse for myself, but both of those events completely threw me off the mat. I didn't even visit the mat. And so I had stopped in November of the past year. Now I went into spring, summer of 13, and I looked at my mat that I had still rolled out in my little apartment there. And finally in Switzerland, which is not so common, sun came through.
Yeah.
Through all the clouds. Is worse than in
Right.
Detroit, actually.
Right.
So I saw that mat kind of grizzling, brizzling, frying in the sun, and I just looked at it and I can't do anything for you. I really can't do anything for you.
What an interesting journey this has been.
So I felt 12 years by that time,
12.
going into 13 years. I had lost my practice.
But there was something deeper going on.
Today I would say I may have lost at that time my physical practice.
Right.
And I just at that moment couldn't get over that fact.
Right.
So
right.
I wanted to cling on to this mat and I couldn't. So there was a time, I remember this, must have been April 13, summer, spring came, and I rolled the mat up. And I said, I'm going to take you on a business trip. And so I schlepped this yoga mat. And it's really not easy because that was one of the heavier, fatter yoga mats.
Right, right.
And you have your suitcase and then this thing sticks out on both ends.
Right.
To get into the plane, put it into the thing, maybe hold it. And I thought by carrying it around and by the weight and taking care of it and being with it, I would rekindle my relationship. That trip, nothing happened.
Wow.
I actually didn't even roll it up. I looked at it and I was like, sorry, I can't do anything for you. And I
What an interesting metaphor.
So
carrying around the extra baggage.
I wanted it. And I felt I owe it to my own yoga mat. I was starting to ask myself, what am I actually going to do now that I broke off 12 years of dedication, of holding up yoga? What's next? Well, the worst thing was, what's my passion, what's my hobby, and who am I?
Right. Who am I without this?
Yoga.
Right.
So then another trip came along to a different country in Europe and schlepped it along again. I finally rolled it out, but it was a hotel that had a carpet in it. So imagine the way you slide on it. And so I did a couple of simple cat-cows and I realized, really, you got a little stiff here. Your spine is bending, but it's not so fluid and easy as it was.
Had your shoulder repaired by then?
My shoulder actually felt better and I hadn't even realized it. And I also felt a little less pinch in the lower body. So I think I was on the way of healing.
Right.
And so after I came back from that business trip and I had finally touched my yoga mat again and I had rolled it out and back up and carried it on the plane, I felt, I need to do something about this.
And how long a period was that, like a whole year?
By then we were actually right in summer.
Okay.
Right.
3/4.
Yeah, 3/4 of a year. And so I felt I need to do something about it. And for me at that time, the easiest was, okay, I lost the practice, go on with it and just accept it for now. But then I made a commitment to myself, observe yourself from all sorts of angles of what is happening to you when you break a very dedicated, a very rigorous 12-year, almost 13 years of yoga practice. So I declared myself of being a one-woman focus group, an experimental stage one-woman focus group.
I love it.
And I don't know what happened. But as soon as I made that commitment, I think something open, and I hear you sometimes saying, you know, open up the channels for the universe to beam stuff in. I hadn't asked for it, and you know,
well, you
I
shifted
had not
your
thought
focus
about it. Right.
From like, why am I not practicing? Why am I not practicing? To, oh, let's look at this a different way.
Right. So all of a sudden, the universal channel was open for receiving. And at the beginning, I must say it was kind of real, you know, simple stuff. You know, one day it came to me, okay, you're almost a year and a half into this, was not doing much. You've gained 10 to 15 pounds. Hello, Beate. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I gained it because I was in Switzerland and I had more time to eat cheese and chocolate, which that's really great there. And, you know, there was a life change, and there was some weight gain. And I also realized, but I really just took the message at that time. Okay, your nice tone in your arms, in your tummy, and in your upper thighs went away. You really start looking like a 43, 44-year-old woman, and you're not replenishing your fountain of youth constantly with your inversion. What do you expect? And then I also realized, you know, the nights became a little bit restless.
Sure.
And stress would get more to me in the sense of my business life was very stressful at that time. And had I not had this injury stuff going on, I think I should have upped it, my physical practice, and deepened my yoga meditation. I didn't do anything. So I felt it.
Right.
For some reason, though, I couldn't do anything. And I was kind of living with my extra 10, 15 pounds. I actually got compliments on it, which was good because it substantiated me to say, I don't have to start this practice right now, because my body was still saying, no more chaturangas, nada.
Okay.
So those were kind of the little things that happened. And for some reason, it didn't stop there.
Tell me more. This is such an amazing, so many people do go through this. They fall off the yoga wagon is what I call it.
And I felt bad about it.
Right, but also they learn so much from it.
Right.
So that's what I love that you're able to share with us, what you've learned through this.
The learning, you know, as simple as it was at the beginning, deepened over the time. And so one of these other things that were deeper for me was, and I had asked you that question in 2010 when we did the yoga teacher training and you were the master teacher. And I remember that I asked you, Catherine, is yoga enough sport to stay fit?
Right.
And I remember to this day, we sat in a group and that was kind of a side conversation, and you never really answered the question. And I didn't know why. And I'm like, was my voice not clear enough? Was I not loud enough? What happened? And it took me until then, like 3 years later, that it finally dawned on me that yoga is not doing.
Right.
It's not a sport.
Right.
And I'm like, I heard it 1,000 times. And only through that experience, it came to me.
Right. You were supposed to have that experience.
I was probably supposed to have this experience that I am not doing yoga. The asanas are to bring you deeper into your body, to listen, to be with yourself, to create that union of body, mind, and spirit. And I had this epiphany of like,
yay,
wow, how dare you are. How childish are you, Beate, to think and make yoga responsible for a naturally slowing metabolism? I saw it by not practicing, that it lifted its own weight, you know, that I had gained weight, that I was stiffer, that I was looking different. So I knew it was doing its stuff.
Right.
What happened to me in the deeper learning was that I all of a sudden looked at this from a different angle, and I was like, well, if this is a philosophy, why don't I add another sport? And I was like, another sport? Like 2-3 years prior to that, I felt this was a sin. I'm doing yoga, I can't do another sport. Why would I? Pretty rigorous. And so I'm like, no, there must have been a little bit of a twister in my brain. I now get it right. This is the philosophy, this is a way of lifestyle, and I'm just adding a little different thing. Well, what could that be? So Switzerland, famous for its hills and mountains and forests and everything that lives in it, I had a park outside my apartment. And so I decided, okay, why don't I start walking? Maybe do a walk run. And I started doing this 3 to 4 times a week, which, you know, when you and I talked about this story first, you said, you know what, you being in nature is also a way of meditation. Right. And I thought about it, it's actually true. And I did this 3-4 times, an hour and a half to 2 hours each.
Very balancing for us.
And I think that was my newfound weight management. Even with the 10-15 pounds extra, I had a lot of fun, and I connected to the fresh air and to the rhythmic walking and breathing.
Well, you immediately connect to the bigger consciousness that's out there, and we don't realize that when we're stuck inside all the time.
Right. So fusing those two things was like the greatest learning for me. And I was kind of starting to reconcile and let go of this doing yoga and building the muscles and all that stuff. And
which is the very common way most of us come into yoga, and it's because the ego is really strong in controlling things still. It's
the pop yoga, as Chris says, which I love. So, and then, you know, once I had figured out, okay, this is a philosophy and a lifestyle, I kind of started poking around a little bit more, and I'm like, why don't I pull out these yoga sutras? I just wanted to explore it a little bit, but something had shifted. It was not go back to yoga on the mat and do the exercise. It was this finding out about the philosophy, the way of life. And it was also when I
you weren't going to get there if you weren't forced off the mat.
I think so. I had to have this
the universe
experience
took care of that for you
to actually make me do all the things that I did and open up the Yoga Sutras. At the time when I went through the yoga teacher training, it wasn't my favorite book.
But the consciousness wasn't there yet for it.
Conscious wasn't there, and now I would read a chapter, I would close it down, I would be fine with reading 2 pages a night, sometimes 4, sometimes not at all. I was just happy to see the book laying in front of my bed. And then I happened to have 2 Indian native people in my team and around me.
Love that.
And so they would constantly pull me into this yoga conversation, and I started to ease into it a little bit more. And that's when I realized, man, I know a lot about this. I mean, those 12 years, 13 years didn't go by just doing nothing. And so I think I groomed a new way of longing for yoga. And it appeared to me, I want to relearn yoga. And I just want to look at the asanas and the thing like a child. And no rush.
Love it.
No hurry. And please, no injury. And just don't do the chaturangas. And that's what I love about your classes, because we're not doing that as much these days. And just take your time and rediscover. Rediscover.
I always feel that way, that when I get into the postures, that, you know, especially if I haven't done certain postures for a while, I love them because they feel brand new again, and it's something new I can learn, because we're always at a different state of consciousness as we stay on this path. So that's going to always continue that way. Can you believe we only have a couple minutes left?
There's 2 more learnings I want to share.
Yeah, so quickly share. I love it. I can't believe we're already done.
A big one, be gentle on yourself.
Yes.
very big topic in my life, which this journey of 2 years actually coincided with a professional coach's education in which I learned exactly the same fact. Be gentle on yourself.
Gentle. I know, we're so hard on
And
ourselves.
the last big thing actually that I felt, and that just came to me, I would say a few months ago, it was while I knew I was missing the Karma Yoga community, as I had said at the beginning of our session, only now I realized that I had never really engaged with it. This community was all around me. There's so many interesting people, friendly people, open people. And I used to come to Karma, and I would probably say I looked pretty tense. And I would go into the studio, sit down,
Come
be
in
quiet.
and go. Right.
Would be getting annoyed about people chitter-chattering before the class starts, and just never really engage. Come in, get my fix, get out, go on to the next thing. And for me to really get
Connected in the community.
into the community is a big thing.
Well, that's because you had this big opening, this big awakening, and when you started to be softer and gentler on yourself,
Right.
you're open to connecting with others now. And that's just saying that the yoga was working all along, even when you didn't think it was. It was.
And that's the biggest thing.
Isn't that amazing? That's what you can look back now and see when we
Right.
thought you were struggling through those 10 months off or whatever. Actually, the yoga was working you very well.
I was not
clearing
alone.
and purifying. And it feels like that sometimes when we're going through it. Well, I gotta wrap this up. Darn, I want to talk more about that, what it feels like when we're going through that. But thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
It's so amazing. And if you'd like to have some more exploration yourself on the yoga mat, please join us at www.karma-yoga.net. Thank you so much.